Dear students, in this module we will discuss and gain knowledge about the review of literature and its related issues, by which you will be able to understand the intricacies of carrying out review of literature in a systematic way. The learning objectives concerned to this module are meaning and importance of review of literature, functions of review of literature, purposes or uses of review of literature, sources of information to review of literature, procedures to be followed in reviewing and writing the review of literature, and finally, common mistakes in writing and presenting the review of literature. Firstly, we will see what do you mean by review of literature. Reviewing of all relevant material or literature related to the research topic in general and research problem in particular is very much essential. In fact, as noted in the earlier module, a preliminary review of literature will be done in order to search and select a suitable research problem. Of course, it should be carried out in an extensive manner throughout the research process, and it ends at the time of report writing. According to CQ University Library, a literature review is an evaluative report of information found in the literature related to the selected area of study. The review should describe, summarize, evaluate and clarify this literature. You should give a theoretical base for the research and help the researcher to determine the nature of his or her research. In writing the literature review, the purpose is to convey to the reader what knowledge and ideas have been established on a topic and what their strengths and weaknesses are. The literature review must be defined by a guiding concept, for example, the researcher's objective, the problem or issues you are discussing, or your argumented thesis. It is not just a descriptive list of material available or a set of summaries. In simple words, a literature review discusses published information in a particular subject area. It can be just a simple summary of sources, but it generally both summarizes and synthesizes available information. In the words of Taylor, a literature review can also be stated as an account of what has been published on a topic by accredited scholars and researchers. It is not just a descriptive list of material available or a set of summaries like annotated bibliography, but it should discuss published information in a particular area or field of specialization in which the researcher intends to select the research topic or problem. While reviewing works, those that are irrelevant should be discarded and those which are peripheral should be looked at critically. All works included in the review must be read, evaluated and analyzed, but relationships between the literatures must also be identified and articulated in relation to researchers' field of research. In the process of reviewing literature, the researcher should gain and demonstrate skills in information seeking, that is, the ability to scan the literature efficiently, manually or computerized, through identifying a set of useful articles and books, and in critical appraisal, that is, the ability to apply principles of analysis to identify unbiased and valid studies. The major functions of review of literature are: provides theoretical background for the topic or research problem under study, helps to establish links between what the researcher is proposing and what has already been studied, and enables the researcher to show how the research findings have contributed to the existing body of knowledge in the particular field of specialization and or discipline, helps in integrating the researcher's findings into the existing body of knowledge. The researcher learns about different aspects related to the research problems considered by other researchers, what they have found about these aspects, the research gaps are identified by them, and the suggestions they have made for further research. The second major use of review of literature is it improves the research methodology. While going through the review of literature, the researcher also comes across various methodological aspects such as research designs, sampling methods, tools and methods of data collection followed by other researchers in the case of research questions similar to the one selected by the researcher. These will be helpful to the researcher to understand which methods have yielded fruitful findings and also which have failed and under what circumstances. Through such knowledge, the researcher will be in a better position to select appropriate methodological aspects for his or her research so as to get valid answers to the research questions proposed. It will also increases the researcher's confidence in adopting the right methodology and equip him or her to defend its use. The third major use of review of literature is it broadens the knowledge base in the area of research. This is the most important function of the review of literature. For reviewing the literature, the researcher is expected to read widely about the subject matter from which the research problem is going to be selected. In this process, the researcher will come across major findings found by others to the same or similar problem selected by the researcher. Besides, the theories that have been taken into consideration by others and the existing research gaps in the particular field or area of research. This will also ensure that the researcher intends to carry out which has not been done earlier, and of course, if a study is going to be repeated, one should state clearly that it is a replication study with some purpose or justification. The fourth major use of review of literature is it integrates the findings with the existing body of knowledge. Through the review of literature, the researcher can easily put forth findings straight away based on his or her research study. However, the important task at the next stage is that the researcher has to examine whether the findings are comparable with or contradict the findings of other researchers who have studied similar research questions. So, likewise, in case of contradictions, the researcher should be able to identify under what circumstances such findings are in comparison to others so as to give appropriate explanations. The researcher also should justify how his findings have contributed to the existing body of knowledge. Thus, it is important to place the researcher's findings in the context of what is already known in a similar field of inquiry, that is, to integrate the findings with review of the existing literature carried out by the researcher. Now, we will discuss in detail about the sources of information for review of literature. In the light of importance given to the critical review of literature in social science research, one should know the various sources of literature and how to obtain the needed information from the same so as to carry out a review related to the topic concerned in a meticulous manner. Some of the following sources would be most helpful in this direction. Of course, before looking into these, one should decide the broad topic of inquiry such as fertility, mortality, migration, etc., and also subtopics such as techniques or models, patterns and trends, differentials and determinants of others, etc. Among the major sources of review of literature, books is the number one. The best place to look into the books is to look at library catalogs maintained in libraries. For library catalog, the fundamental rule is that the subject index is followed for major as well as minor topics. From this, one should be able to make out and go through the subject of interest relevant to his or her research topic. One can use even subject catalog keywords and narrow down the subject area of research to a specific theme. Then one can start to prepare a bibliography or list of books with details like author name, title of the book, the year of publication, besides accession number allotted to the particular library. If one feels that such a list is lengthy and only available through the library computers, one can request the concerned persons at the library for a printout also. This saves a lot of time of the researcher. Then comes, after selecting a few books appropriate to one's interest, say about 10 to 15, one can go through the bibliography provided in each of them so as to get some more relevant ones published earlier than the one on hand. Like this, the researcher has to develop the bibliography of the books of interest for further examination. In some subjects, unedited bibliographies, that is details of books, will be available in abstract format, serves this purpose till the date of publication of them. At times, a book review index also would be helpful in this direction. The bibliography list may be finalized either in the written format or cards or typed format on paper and or as a computer file, that is soft copy. Books provide detailed information, but publication of books takes place later, say about 1 to 2 years after the research, and some libraries may not have the books of interest. Next major source of review of literature is journals. Journals in each discipline are the most crucial and popular sources for a review of literature. One should go through the journals related to the topic of research in a similar manner as followed in the case of books. There are several sources designated to make a search of journals earlier. They include indexes of journals, that is Scopus Journal Database, abstracts of articles, that is EBSCO Science Index, etc., and citation indices like Social Science Citation Index. There are several sources designed to make search of journals easier. They include indexes of journals like Scopus Journal Database, abstract of articles like EBSCO Socio Index, and citation indices like Social Sciences Citation Index. Each of these indexing, abstracting and citation services is available in print or accessible through the internet. Most of these are prepared in the form of an electronic database in a number of disciplines. The procedure of preparing bibliography of journals related to the subject of interest is the same as books. In addition to these, hard copies also would be available in the library. From all these sources, one can select as many journals as possible depending upon their availability in a particular discipline. Of course, one cannot forget that in some disciplines there are interdisciplinary journals. For example, disciplines like sociology and population studies or economics and population studies journals, and multidisciplinary journals also are there. For example, disciplines like sociology, social work and population studies or sociology, economics and population studies journals. Since the subject of research and the matter to be published are of that sort of in nature. The major advantage of articles and research papers in journals is that they provide the most up-to-date information as compared to books, but here too some journals take 1 to 2 years for publication. The third major source of review of literature is conference, seminar proceedings and papers. Periodically holding conferences and seminars on different topics and themes is a common academic and research activity among almost all the social sciences. During such activities, while individual researchers present full papers prepared by them for discussion, the organizers of these seminars and conferences would bring out a volume of abstracts that are accepted and going to be presented. At times, some of the organizers would bring out the proceedings of these seminars and conferences in a volume either before or after the conferences. These would also serve as good sources for review of literature, which would provide mostly the latest or ongoing research information. One can get either the full papers by attending the conferences and seminars or contacting the presenters also. The fourth major source of review of literature is dissertations and theses. All young researchers undergoing MPhil and PhD programs would submit their research works in the form of dissertations and theses, and these are mostly available in the concerned colleges and universities where the researchers carry out their research work. A copy of most of these would be available in the concerned libraries, which also form the best source for a review of literature in the subject of matter of interest. In these sources, in addition to the major findings, the methodological aspects followed by the researcher, the review of literature will also be available till the date of submission of their dissertation or thesis. In the Indian context, the Indian Council of Social Science Research, that is ICSR New Delhi, has established a National Social Science Documentation Center which serves as a library for social scientists use in order to have a policy of acquisition of PhD thesis in social sciences approved by the Indian universities. Research scholars from different regions visit NASDOC to consult this collection. Due to a space problem, in the recent past, the NASDOC has decided to keep the old collection of PhD thesis in microfilm and CD-ROMs. At times, PhD dissertations on India by Indian or foreign research scholars approved by foreign universities are also accepted. The fifth major source of review of literature are the internet and websites. In the recent past, the internet has become an important tool for finding and publishing literature in almost every academic discipline and professional field. Through an internet search, one can identify published material in books, journals and other sources with immense ease and speed. Internet search is carried out through search engines like Google, googlescholar.com and Yahoo. At times, Wikipedia, that is some sort of the online encyclopedia, is available, also would be helpful in providing minimum description and explanation of terms and concepts of certain topics. Some of the websites have been exclusively developed for academic and research purposes. They include www.juststart.org, sciencedirect.com, emeraldinsight.com, inflipnet.ac.in, etc. All these websites have become more popular and useful in the recent period. In fact, there is no exaggeration to say that without these internet sources, the researchers are not able to do the review of literature on their topic of interest. Keywords, either individual or combination, play a vital role in searching the books, journals and other material of interest on the topic selected. After understanding the sources of review of literature, I would like to give a small detail note about procedures to be followed in review of the literature and writing the review. First and foremost one, reviewing the literature related to the selected topic under consideration is a gigantic task. The researcher should plan in advance how to go about it and then look into various sources cited above and start reading each of these sources critically and carefully, which is a laborious work. The question as to what material or aspects to take from these sources is another major difficulty the researcher faces at this juncture. To lessen these difficulties, one should follow some of the steps that follow. However, these steps will be more appropriate in the case of those who have selected the topic of research and thereby have intended to do a critical review of literature, but not for those who are trying to select the research problem itself. The first procedure to be followed is planning. The researcher should identify the themes and sub-themes to be reviewed for the broad topic under consideration. One should also decide to some extent the limits of the problem under investigation and thereby proceed accordingly. It would be a good idea to plan to use separate sheets of paper for each theme or issues identified. Secondly, reading and note taking. The researcher should start reading relevant sources critically and take notes related to each of the themes and sub-themes under consideration. Here, one should mainly concentrate on major findings of other researchers besides the theories and methodological issues adopted by them. Importance must be given to research carried out in the past. Of course, in each discipline, some of the old ones, especially in the case of theories, need to be cited as they may be classic works in the particular area of research work. Also, one should look into the bibliographies of others so as to further enhance the knowledge base of the research work. Information regarding the year of publication, place of publication, publisher name, page numbers, etc. needs to be noted down without fail. Analyzing is another procedure to be followed, wherein this is a crucial step to be followed is that the researcher should summarize, synthesize, critique and compare all the sources under consideration in order to assess the field of research as a whole. Care may be taken to back up the claims with the evidence like data, statistics if any. Next step is drafting. The researcher at first should develop a rough draft of the existing research, that is review collected, in a critical manner and decide how to organize the same so as to suit the topic under consideration. The draft should be written in the researcher's own voice, that is own ideas and wording. However, quotes may be useful to a limited extent. Then comes the revising and final writing. This is yet another important step in which the researcher should revise and finalize the structural, stylistic and grammatical issues in the review of literature collected. This process is not always a linear process. Depending upon the size and scope of your literature review, you may find yourself refining and presenting the same. The presentation of review of literature varies across disciplines as well as types of reports, that is dissertation or thesis or project reports or technical reports, etc. In case of doctoral dissertations in population studies, a review of literature is mostly presented as a separate chapter and the information collected will be presented under major themes and sub-themes and mostly end with research gaps identified. In spite of meticulously following all these procedures, there used to be some common mistakes in writing and presenting the review of literature. Though review of literature used to be well planned and written, while presenting, some mistakes of errors are likely to be there, mainly due to lack of familiarity with the fundamentals of how to write and present the review of literature, no command on language, that is in English language, negligible and lack of attention, etc. Some of the common mistakes need to be avoided are as follows: citing the authors, that is surnames, direct quotations, provide page numbers, repetition of ideas and sentences, typographical errors or written errors like author name, year of publication, etc., fragments or incomplete sentences, grammar, punctuations and tense like past tense and present perfect, etc., citation of phrases, unjustified claims, that is without evidence or data support writing, then plagiarism, no reference as such, citation of reference not in a particular style like APA style or MLA style, etc., presentation irrelevant content and information, inserting long URLs in the text or body of the review of literature chapter, monotonously using the same words like found that, showed that, etc. Similar findings may be combined and simplified, writing the abstracts of published papers as it is. In sum, in this module, a detailed discussion is made about the essential aspects of review of literature like importance of review of literature, functions of review of literature, purpose and uses of review of literature in academic research, sources of information for review of literature, procedures to be followed in reviewing and writing the review of literature, and common mistakes in writing and presenting review of literature. Thank you.